Hey everyone, happy Tuesday. My name is Japheth Mass here with Management Consulted, joined by several members of the Management Consulted team, joined by Marc Cosentino of Case Questions and Case in Point fame. And so just excited to chat here today about case competitions and how to lose your next case competition. And of course, the flip side of that, which is we'll be sharing just a lot of great stuff about how to win your next case competition, how to set yourself up for success. So I know we've kind of primarily got two groups of folks here tuning in from Zoom, from LinkedIn Live, from YouTube, and from the podcasts. And so we've got some career services folks here, and we've got students who are thinking about or have participated in case competitions and are looking for kind of how to improve, how to win the next one. So a big welcome from the whole team here at Management Consulted. We've got some great content lined up for you today, and just really appreciate you taking this time on your Tuesday afternoon or evening to hang out with us as well as with Marc. Thanks for joining. Type in where you're calling in from. So we'd just love to see where you're coming in from, as well as which program or school you're a part of. And while we're doing that, I'm gonna turn it over to my colleague Eden. And if we can go to the next slide, we're gonna share just a little. Well, actually, we're gonna pop up a poll right here just to get a sense of where y'all are at. So give me one sec to pull up that poll. All right. I'll give you 15 seconds to fill this in. So if you have participated in a case competition, just let us know how many you've participated in. Type in the chat or answer the poll. It'll just help tailor today's content to where everybody's at on on the call here. Awesome. All right, let's leave it up for 5 more seconds while I'm doing that. Let me go to the chat. Awesome. We got Clemson University, UCLA, UPenn, Georgia, USC. Okay, okay. Levinus,
You
West.
Georgia. Sorry, Jay. We gotta call that one.
I just gotta.
UGA. What's up, UGA?
I'm sorry. I'm a University of Alabama guy, so I gotta try to get my
And
digs
it
in when I
shows.
can.
And it shows. Yeah. Also never say that to somebody from UGA.
No disrespect whatsoever. Thanks for joining. Okay, so 75% of folks who filled in the poll have not participated in a case comp. Great. All right, we've got you right where we want you. About 1 out of 5 have completed one or two, and then 5% of y'all in three or more. Great. That's really helpful. Appreciate your participation. Awesome. All right, we can go to the next slide. And Eden, I would love for you to quickly introduce yourself for the folks on the call and let them know how they can get involved.
Well, thanks, Japheth. I was gonna throw shade on the UGA comment, but I'm really glad Jenny Ray did. So I'm really excited to be with you today. My job, if you all are not aware, is I support our university partners. We have 126 currently as of last week, university partners, and I'm really excited about what we're seeing shape up in this space as far as implementing top tier case method across academic programming is concerned, and we're seeing rapid growth in that area, primarily in the not only the case interview space, which we've been doing for years and years, but also the case competition space. So I don't know if y'all are aware if you are working for career services or for academic programs, but case competitions and sandbox they are sandbox learning environments, or they can be if they're campus based. Sandbox learning environments for your students to learn how to impress employers, how to sharpen their skills that they're going to need, increase their business acumen, and get them job ready. And so we come in and we bring a team of mentors and judges. We bring an original case, and we help your students get ready for recruitment and just like having an excellent career. So if you are at all interested in learning more about how we can partner with you on that, we'd love to do that. I think I have space for maybe 4 or 5 more case competitions in this coming academic year. I'm going to drop the link in the chat. You feel free to book a meeting with me, and I'd be happy to share with you about best practices or potentially partner together and just bring that to your students. So thanks so much. Oh, it looks like Japheth already dropped that in the chat. So there you go. Thanks, Jay.
Boom. I'm ahead of you. All right. Thanks so much, Eden. Yeah, these case comps are a really fun part of what we get to do at Management Consulted, and Eden does an amazing job bringing that to our partners. So get on her calendar. It'll be a great 15 or 30 minutes of your day. All right. And if we move on to the next slide, just we'll highlight two quick ways that you can get involved with Management Consulted if you're a student looking to kind of build real world strategy skills that will translate not only to your case competition experience, but also to your future jobs. So I'm going to ask my colleague Katie to share a little bit about strategy sprint and super prep.
Thanks, Japheth. And this is going to be a great session. I can feel it. So, real quick, I am your point of contact if you're really not sure what program we offer is great for your needs and your timeline. You can book a call with me for 15 minutes or shoot an email out to teams@management.consulted.com. But let me talk real quick about the strategy sprint and super prep. Strategy Sprint is a 1 week real life consulting experience led by our world-class coaches. And you get to work with them in small teams to provide real consulting advice to a company. This gives you experience to test whether consulting is a good fit for you. It's going to give you confidence, and it's going to basically prepare you to start day one ready to go. This 1 week experience you can get a la carte, or you can get it as part of our super prep package, which is our most premium experience that also includes 20 hours of coaching. That 20 hours of coaching is based on what we have seen in terms of success. People who commit to the process of training to interview typically need about 22 cases. And if you get 20 of those with one of our world-class coaches, we think you're going to be pretty ready. So think about it. If you're ready to jump in and join us, you can scan the QR code here, or you can click on one of the links in the chat. And I'll stop there. Back to you, Japheth.
Thank you so much, Katie. Okay, I love strategy sprint. I love super prep. I get to kind of be involved in a lot of the stuff that goes along with these projects, and it's just so fun seeing a consulting project come to life, seeing that those skills get built in the students, and just kind of a lot of folks kind of, hey, now I know that consulting is right for me. So great project. Link in the show notes to learn more. Cool. All right. Well, I think we're ready to dive into the meat of today's conversation. Jenny Ray, I'm gonna turn it over to you. Let's rock and
Okay.
roll.
Awesome. Also, I would like to point out in the chat that Japheth didn't just defend UGA, but all of the rest of Alabama's competitors. So if anybody was feeling like you were left out of that, just jump right into the chat and you can, you can be, kind of bothered by his position. So there you go. Um, Hey, welcome to the call. Look, case competitions are awesome for team building, for kind of building these opportunities. And today we're going to walk through some of the major mistakes that we saw in the MC World Cup case competition this last year. If you were a part of the case competition, we're so excited that you're here. Hopefully, we're going to see a lot of people returning for next year's case comp, and we're going to release the applications for that case comp in just a couple of months. So we wanted to get ahead of it by coming on today and talking about some of the things that just automatically got you DQ'd in the process and how you can fix it. This is different from how you're actually going to walk through answering the questions. These are just some like real common mistakes. And I just want to put you in position. When I was at Bain and I had 450, 500 applications, I was not looking for who I wanted to interview. I was looking for the easiest people I could eliminate. Right? Because if I could get rid of 50% of the group super quickly, it made me able to focus on the remainder to decide between those folks. And that was really unique position that helped me understand this. This last year, we had hundreds of teams apply for a total of 100 spots. That was the first year. This next year, it's going to be madness. A lot of the case competitions that you're going to, you don't even get a chance to go all the way to the big dance until you follow some of these things. So we really want to make sure that you understand what some of the keys are. So Mark and I are going to tag team a little bit here. Mark's going to kick off with how you can think about building a great team for a case comp. And we're doing this now because once you've got your team in place, there are some things that are potentially bigger challenges coming down the line. So Mark, key team building mistakes, we'll let you kick it off.
Okay, next slide. Okay, so I'm going to talk about buggering it up right from the start. And the first thing is team selection. Most of you will pick your friends to be part of a team. We all like each other. How hard can this be? But there's a lot more to it than just that. So there are basically three things. Sometimes people pick their friends to do it. Sometimes there's the school that picks the team, and sometimes we do tryouts. So next slide. All right, so team selection. So sometimes the school will pick the team, and because they have this idea of the perfect dream team. And here we see Michael Magic and Larry Bird, and those guys won the gold medal, and it was the perfect dream team. Next slide. These guys, they didn't fare so well. They were lucky to get the bronze. And that was because they were all great players, but they weren't good team players. They didn't check their ego at the door. They all wanted to be the superstar, and everything went downhill from there. So then there's the student selected kind of team tryout. And this is important because you get to see people in action, and you get to see how they interact with each other. And next slide. This slide was taken at basically 2 o'clock in the morning during the team tryout, where people were, schools will put on intramural, I guess is the best word for intramural cases, where case competitions, where people within, maybe 5 teams within a school, and I know management consultant runs those as well as we do as well at Case Questions. But having those intramural, seeing people in action plays a huge role on who gets selected for the team or who should be selected for the team. Next slide. All right, so there's some key ingredients for a successful team. You need a time tyrant, someone that will keep everybody on schedule, because it's easy to get off schedule. You eat up a lot of time, particularly when you only have maybe 12 hours or 24 hours to come up with a presentation. You need a cheerleader who at 2 o'clock in the morning is going to, get everybody jazzed up and moving forward. You need a devil's advocate, who's someone who can, politely point out some of the problems. You need someone who's good at financial modeling for most competitions. You certainly need a slide master, someone who's good at putting presentations together. And one of the things that I do with my slides is I have a icon bank, which is something you may want to think about. So instead of trying to create all these icons right from scratch, if you have an icon bank, you just slide them right in, and it saves you a lot of time. And you also need an author, because a lot of this is data-driven storytelling, and you need to be able to tell a story that the judges can understand and wrap their head around. Traits, not only a strong work ethic, you need to be coachable. You need certainly to be competitive. And as we pointed out before, you need to be a team member, a team player. And then with presentation skills, your best presenters are going to go first and last. And people need high confidence level, good presentation skills. In fact, during the case competition that, the World Cup that we did together, the winning MBA team won basically because they had great presentation skills, and that we'll get to in a minute. They were great in the Q&A afterwards because most of the answers were pretty much the same. It was how they presented it. And then one thing that most people don't think about is functional expertise. And this will vary from case to case. But if you're going with all your friends and all your friends are finance geeks, then you're going to have problems with the marketing part of it or the strategy part of it or even the supply chain. And one area that most people forget is human capital. And that's extremely important because, who's going to do it? All right, next slide. Some tryout tips, okay? So we talked about intramural cases, basically doing a 24-hour case competition within your school or even a 12-hour. You need to set up clear expectations on the selection methodology so people know and have a good idea on what's expected of them. Find some good judges, whether it's faculty or alumni or other students, people who are going to be brutally honest with you. Video or not, video all presentations so you can play it back and people can see what they did well and what they didn't do so well because they think that they really knocked it out of the park, but then when they see themselves on video, they realize some of the mistakes that they make. Save all your presentations that you can learn from. And also, provide feedback to everybody, the people who made the team, they weren't perfect. Where can they improve? And certainly the people who didn't make the team, what they can do to do better. Next slide.
Any final points from that section, Mark?
Just that you don't pick your friends, you pick your team. And you pick people who are going to be strong, who have good presentation skills, who are team players and have a good work ethic are probably the most important things, takeaways.
I love it. Well, some of you maybe had never thought about how you build a great team and kind of assumed that teams were given here. There definitely is a lot to navigate there. Beyond the team, there are key opportunities for you once you actually move into processing the information and making mistakes on how you build the slides. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And a lot of our highlights are focused here. Before we do that, Japheth, are there any pre-submitted questions that you feel like fit really great right here before we move on to the next session? In addition, if you guys have questions as we go, if you could pop them into the chat, then we'll be able to moderate them into the conversation as well.
Yeah, no, we do have some pre-submitted questions that would be great to slot in here. So number one here, it's so hard to fit as much information as I want to into just 15 and 20 slides. How do you like decide what to include and exclude from your slide deck?
Well, okay, so I'll take that. That's one of the toughest things that you have to decide. You have to be brutally honest on what stays and what goes. What goes doesn't have to go far, it goes to the appendix. So every point that you make should be made into a slide, and most of that is going into the appendix. Now, your main deck could be anywhere from 7 to 20 slides, depending on the type of case competition it is, but your appendix could be anywhere from 5 to 60 slides. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the appendix in a while. But that's one of the hardest things is to decide what goes in and what goes into the appendix.
And I'll just add on to that, just going back to what Mark mentioned, the slide master. The slide master is really in charge of a lot in this kind of situation. And the slide master isn't just collecting slides from people, but actually keeping a specific eye on the story. So while the time tyrant is kind of making sure that you're finishing in time, the slide master is making sure that the story is cohesive and is going to usually it's I would say helpful in advance to actually have somebody have the decision on this, what stays, what goes. Because if you try to do that by committee, it does slow down your process, and it means that often, people with strong opinions but not an eye to what the whole team has or wants to say can kind of win out. So you create additional friction, and you don't actually get more benefit from it. So having somebody pre-designated to actually make some of those calls are super helpful. In addition, I think we found in a lot of our coaching that a lot of people feel like they want to put too much on one slide, actually. So, and a lot of people try to make the slides and then talk through them. We find it really helpful to talk through your insights once you've got a slide completed. When you figure out what you actually want to say, it also can help you improve what needs to go on the slide. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second.
I'll
Japheth,
give
back to
you,
you if there's
I'll
any
give
other good
you,
questions here.
yeah, I'll give one more question that directly ties to what you're just saying, Jenny Ray, and then we can move on. But the question is, when is it okay to have wordy slides, if ever?
Yeah, I'm gonna like nail this one huge. But it is literally never okay. Actually, it's a really easy way for us to eliminate you because there's not a chance. And the World Cup is a great example, but there are different kinds of situations. There isn't a chance with a slide that has more than 40 words on it that you are able to keep the attention of your audience and also go through all the key elements on the slide. So you either have the opportunity to lose your audience, which is an automatic fail, or to skip over what you put on the slide and to divide your audience's attention, which is also an automatic fail. So if you want to include more than 40 words on a slide, you will automatically fail that slide, that category, that issue. Nobody is like, wow, that's a really smart insight. Everybody is like, I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea what you want me to do. I can't pay attention to what you're saying. I checked out, and they rate you lower. So it's actually one of the very easiest ways. And we notice that a lot of people, potentially for the issues that we just talked about, instead of putting stuff into the appendix or just taking it out because it doesn't fit the narrative, they were like, you know what we should do? We should take 8 slides and make them one slide. That's going to be the way to go. And that's absolutely the worst idea. Anything you want to add to that, Mark?
Yeah, and it's not only words. It can, during the case of World Cup, we saw a lot of slides that had 3 or 4 graphs on them, and that can be overwhelming as well. It's simplicity. One of the things that we talked about in the other workshop was simplicity. It's not about complexity. And if you throw too much at people, it overwhelms them. They don't know what they're supposed to pull out of it. So use pictures, any other way that you can communicate what you want to get across. So yeah, more than 40 words is certainly bad. I would say even more than 30 words is bad.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to think about it, just imagine Mark and I, right? We represent the audience, and some of our corporate judges are smarter than we are, but like we're only of average intelligence, guys, right? Make it easy for us. Make it simple for us to digest the information. By proxy, most executives that you're ever going to present to actually find it incredibly helpful when people are very direct and incredibly simple, when they distill complex data analysis, a significant amount of work, sometimes 6 months of work into a single slide or two. And they don't think that it's worse. They think that it's better when they know exactly what to do and exactly why. And so it often takes more iterations and more development to get you to that place. You're presenting to a executive audience, and that's your main focus. Let's move on to talk a little bit about some key slide building mistakes, just to build on some of the insights that we've shared here. One of the number one mistakes is if you don't tie your presentation to the actions that you want your audience to take, right? So remember, this is ways to lose a case competition. One way that you can lose it is just tell them information. No one cares. We're not in a situation where we are interested in the information. We're not chasing down intellectual curiosity. We are biased toward action. Every one of your audience members wants to know what we should do. And so every part of the presentation, every step of the presentation should either lead to 4 to 6 micro actions or 1 mega action, right? Which is supported with 4 to 6 data points of why you should do that. Actions that do not line up with each other, do this, but check it with that, but also check this and also think about this, add complexity without clarity. So when I talk about micro actions, I mean step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, not 4 completely different initiatives that you would want an organization to launch. The presentation really needs to focus on what that specific action is, and that's going to flow through from the top title of every slide all the way through to the information that's inside it. And that's actually one great way, going back to the initial question of, hey, how do you take 15 to 20 slides and make them, fewer slides or keep them simple? One of the things that you do is you figure out which ones serve the action and which one are just ancillary. You make sure which ones someone has to believe. And when in doubt, you even go 1 step further and you think about what their objections might be to the actions. The second thing that you could do to really goof it up is to not align your talk track with your slides. So again, you have to recognize that while you may have worked on this for hours, days, overnights, the person that you're in an audience with is entering into this moment very, very abruptly. And so if an executive who wanders in from the previous meeting where they had to make a $140 million budget decision is walking into your meeting where they have to cut 1,000 people for headcount, right? And those 2 meetings, you have to enter them into the conversation and keep them super clear. So a lot of people try to do way too much. In fact, I would say this is the most common problem we saw that made it very easy to eliminate you. You overworked and underdelivered. And we need to make sure that as you're going through the process, you strengthen key elements. How does this look? Really specifically, our guidance is that you would start at the talk track from your title and you would read it out. So you're not paraphrasing the title, you actually read it out explicitly. What that does is that anchors each person to each new moment in the slide deck to each individual page. And then you off slide add some additional context about what the slide shares, which is called slide framing. So you're walking through the key elements on the slide that you would want to add. Then you're going to go through and actually harken back to your couple key elements, which should be 1, maximum 2 charts. You're going to kind of clear those charts, explain what's on them the same way that you would inside a case interview. And you're going to add a little bit of color on the insights. And then you're going to summarize with an action and a next step so that each individual slide has a talk track that is approximately 50% on the slide where you're reading or referring to information directly on the slide and you're explaining to somebody exactly where you are on the slide so their eyes stay with you, and 50% of additional information so they can't just read the slide to get it. They need the additional information in order to get the most out of it. And that 50-50 guidance is one of the most common rules broken, and it sets apart these executive presenters who win case competitions from people who make wildly long, challenging to read slides and have a talk track that later does not match it. Japheth, any other questions about the slide component of case competitions that we could address right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So talking about slides, where do you draw the line for assumptions due to a lack of data?
Great. So if you make assumptions, you're going to explain how you modeled something out. Assumptions are a very core part of standard business analysis. And I actually have one that I kind of will refer to frequently where we had to assume a logistics cost. Well, one of the core inputs for logistics costs that use trucking is fuel prices. And so you will assume a fuel price in order to come up with a number. You will, on the back end, run scenarios with different assumptions to test the comfort and the validity of your project to see within what bands it remains viable and which ones break the viability of the project. And if pressed, you would bring up that additional analysis. But you will include assumptions reasonably often inside your analysis. You will just explain what the assumptions are, why you chose them, and how they led you to your conclusion, and then also how durable you believe they are if tested on them in the Q&A. Marc, anything to add there on the assumption side?
No, I think you nailed it.
Cool. All right. Let's move on to the next section.
Great. We're going to talk a little bit about Q&A in the future, but when y'all are building us stories and insights and ideas that do base themselves on assumptions, that's one of my favorite places to ask questions. If you don't explain what the assumption was, I just go back and I say, tell me how you got that number. And that's sometimes where the entire analysis falls apart. So you need to both know it, and I would recommend that you get ahead of it inside your core presentation as well. All right, Marc, on to you. Delivery. We had a lot of fun with this one. Here's your first slide.
All right, so right from the start, you pick a team leader, as Jenny Ray talked about. You review the material, you develop a hypothesis. And one of the things that Jenny Ray brought up in the last one is that each student should go off on their own and develop their own hypothesis, and then come back to the group and basically duke it out. Now, chances are 2 or 3 are going to have the same hypothesis, but it's a good way to kind of get no one is going to overpower one over the other. You get to think it out on your own and then duke it out at the end. And then design a MISI work stream. But also the 5th step is to allocate Q&A responsibilities, because this is where the competition is really won or lost. Because when you get to the finals, all right, everyone, the final 5 have done a great job on laying out their idea, their recommendation, their presentation. And it really comes down to how they handle the Q&A. So next slide. All right, so this part of your presentation should be as well organized as the presentation itself. And you want to make sure that you assign team members different areas. So if we get a question on the finances, so-and-so takes it. If we get a question on delivery and supply chain, the other person takes it. So make sure that each member of the team knows what they're responsible for. And it should be, the Q&A should be orchestrated in advance. The members should be, if it's live and you're in front of the judges, like on this slide, the person who answers the question takes 1 step forward, answers the question, and then steps back. And then the next question comes, and whoever is going to answer that. You also usually have one person that's controlling the slides. So when they say to you, can you go back to the slide on the strategy, the person who's operating the slides can go immediately back to that. Or if they say, did you consider this? You can say, I'm glad you asked that question. Can you please bring up slide number 36 in the appendix? And we'll talk about this in a second. And that way it comes up, it shows them that you looked at the issue and you eliminate it because of these reasons. Right, next slide. All right, so use of the appendix. So the main deck, I love this slide because I think the iceberg is the perfect example of this. Your main deck's going to be anywhere, maybe from 5 to 20 slides, but your appendix can be anywhere from 3 to 60 slides because you hopefully you saved everything and turned it into a slide. It doesn't have to be as well developed as the main deck, but it has to have key information and where you got that information from it. The entire team should know the contents of the appendix, and then you have the individuals who are focused on particular areas know all their appendix slides as well as they know the main deck slides. Next slide. And so this is an example of, an appendix slide where you have kind of overall strategy, you have supply chain. So you'll be able to find each of these slides very easily. And so then what the next slide is going to tell you, and you can go to the next slide, is that you want to link to the navigator. So down here in the right-hand corner, I have the little case in point icon. And whenever I do a presentation, if I go down to that and click on it, it will take me to my appendix. And then I'll be able to click on what I need in the appendix. And then I'll be able to get back to the main appendix slide. So you want to be in a position where you can get to any slide on your presentation with 2 clicks. One of the major mistakes that people make is that they don't set up a hyperlink and they're basically flipping through 5 or 6, 7 slides trying to find the slide that you're talking about. And it looks very unprofessional and it's very confusing. So you want to work with hyperlinks. You want to be able to get to every slide within basically 2 clicks. Next slide. So one of the things you don't want to hear is, you lost me when you said so-and-so. And so that's when you want to be able to say, well, can we bring up slide 36 in the appendix and explain to them, or go back to a slide in the main deck. So you want to be able to get to those slides very easily. So some of the other mistakes in a Q&A is you don't know who should answer the question, and you're all looking at each other trying to, do you want to take it? Do you think you can go? The other thing is no one can answer the question because they didn't think about it, and they should have thought about all this beforehand. Knowing all the slides in the appendix or not knowing all the slides in the appendix, not being able to locate a slide within 2 clicks, and poor eye contact with the judges or using slang is another mistake. Now, when we did the World Cup and people submitted their 5-minute video, they wouldn't include an appendix on their 5-minute video. But when they did their presentation, one of the things that surprised me is that no one had an appendix with their live presentation, because they got Q&A at the end. So when the 5 finalists came, they did their presentation, and then we opened it up to questions, and the judges asked them questions. And some they could answer and some they couldn't. And the winning team, especially in the NBA one, was able to answer all the questions where some of the other teams couldn't, or had a hard time doing it, or weren't aware who was going to answer the question, or 2 people jumped in at the same time. So it didn't seem well orchestrated, and that way it didn't seem very professional. Jenny Ray, anything you want to add to this list?
I just really want to maybe add one thing that Mark, I think, inferred to, but isn't on this list explicitly. It is optimal if not only do you know who should answer the question, but that everybody is prepared to answer questions. So the optimal teams have multiple people answering questions, not one superstar who did all the slides for everybody who's answering all the questions. So this is one of the main reasons, going back to like team selection, and even slide preparation that we really request that you own your own work stream so that when somebody asks a question and says, hey, can you go back to that third slide on the market? You know, the person who talked about the market, did all of the work on the market, made all of the assumptions on the market, owns all of the Q&A on the market, because the optimal team is going to have 4 people, 5 people saying, absolutely, let me walk you through that. And then the next person says, got it, let me walk you through this. And when you watch that interaction happen, the cumulative impression that you get is that this is a team that is superstar status. So we really love to see not just that somebody knows who's supposed to answer the question or that there's somebody who's great at Q&A, but that everybody on your team has equal, passionate, positive ownership over the Q&A.
Yes, and I'm just going to add that, when you do it live, you don't want to be looking at the cheater screen up on the wall in the back above the judge's head. You want to know what's on every slide without having to look at the slide. So when you say pull up slide 36 in the appendix, you already know what's on it because if it's a finance slide, you're the finance person. You know exactly what's on the slides, you know all the information, and you can answer those questions. So it really comes down to confidence level, communication skills, and orchestration.
Marc, the last thing that we're going to say here, and then we can go to the next slide, that I think it's important for y'all to know is that we've been a little bit excited maybe to see that there is no maturity or there's no win that's aligned with how senior you are, both in the undergrad and in the post-grad tracks, right? We had people that were younger that were crushing it. We had a freshman team win one of the case competitions that we were a part of this year. And so I also just don't want you to disqualify yourself or use anything as less than your best opportunity to kind of get this going on. All right.
So who wins? Well, is it the team that didn't bugger up the Q&A? Well, yeah, that's part of it. But it's also, the team that it's usually not the best idea that wins. It's the most clear, thought out, and defended idea that wins. The clarity, one simple idea, well defended. And you're going to find that you're probably going to spend 60% of your time on the defense, on the why, when defending your solution. Teams win because the judges can clearly articulate the recommendation in one sentence and provide 2 or 3 key points from memory. When you are presenting your main slides, you're going to bring up the recommendation probably at least 3 times during that presentation. It all goes back to the pyramid principle where you lead with the recommendation, right? And then you mention it at least 3 times so they know what your recommendation is, they remember it, and they know the thing. Also, your recommendation should move the needle, not cost an arm and a leg. It needs to be feasible for the company to do both physically, legally, and culturally. It needs to be implemented in a relatively short period of time and have not been tried by the company before. So it's clarity that wins, not complexity. It's one good, well-defended, thought out, articulated idea or story, and not a laundry list of a grand scheme. And teams that walk off the stage with their heads held high because they nailed the Q&A are the teams that win. And as a judge, you can feel it. You know that they've come together as a team, that there's chemistry there. They're happy to be there. They're not scared. They're ready to jump on anything that you throw at them. And it doesn't matter whether it's in person or it's in Zoom, it's easy for the judge to know that. And that carries a lot of weight. Jenny Ray?
Love it. Um, I want to just talk a little bit more about some things that we've touched on to kind of highlight and tag team on some of what Marc has been saying. We're really going to emphasize delivery today because if you want to lose a case competition, you're going to get part of the way there, but not go all the way. So the delivery is really that kind of X factor key part at the end. The first thing that I just want to talk about is confidence. And this, I'm going to apply one situation to the standard presentation and one to the Q&A. When somebody comes at the beginning and says, we developed a really thorough understanding of the industry and we have a recommendation that we think you're going to be very excited about. That's a very different kind of presentation rather than like, we are team X and here's our idea. Right. So if somebody kind of sells the idea from the beginning to the end of the core presentation by beginning with presenting why you think somebody's going to like it and then going and taking that the whole way through, it's pretty critical. In addition, a lot of the transitions are incredibly effective when you start by saying, we thought that this would be the case, but when we looked at the data, we found that the following would be the insight. And so telling stories that really kind of tie together beliefs that the audience may have and then refute those beliefs inside your transitions create for incredible, powerful storytelling. The same thing is true when you're doing Q&A. When I say, hey, tell me how you got this data, and somebody doesn't answer my question directly, they don't say, I picked this number. If instead they say, I thought about this by looking at 3 different scenarios, I ran all 3 of the scenarios, and this was the one that really made the most sense when I pressure tested it, and here's why. When they kind of walk me through their analytical thought process as a way to transition into an answer and transition from slide to slide in the main presentation, those transitions are magical. The baseline of those transitions is when you say, hey, this team member is going to take the next slide so that I know that your portion is finished and it gives the next person a chance to step up to the plate. But those transitions that are storytelling transitions, that's the real magic inside these opportunities. When you're thinking about the delivery as well, some of you have never had the chance to do case competitions or live delivery, and this practice is part of it. Your job isn't to be perfect. Your job is to be one level better than you were the last time. And so recording yourselves in advance, critiquing amidst your team, even bringing in like a sorority sister or a teammate for a different kind of project or a classmate to say, hey, would you run us through this? Here's a scoring guide. Tell us what we could do better. If you give yourselves the time in advance to do that, you will notice a marked change in how you're able to deliver overall. And ask them to be ruthless and comprehensive, right? Ask them to tell you if you're not standing in the appropriate way, if you don't, for example, if you don't kind of stand in order when you're up in the front, if somebody lurks back behind the screen and other people are stepping forward, if some people do the soccer clutch where you put your hands in front of your legs, kind of, standing there with a hunch, and some people are more open-handed. Like there are small things that make a huge difference inside these presentation portions. And Marc and I could teach an entire class just on how to deliver a case competition presentation from A to Z. But the best recommendation that I have is practice it in advance and practice it with an audience so that you can get that feedback. The final thing is attire. I actually don't think that everybody needs to be dressed like an army of robots. That's not important. But everybody does need to be dressed at the same level of professionalism. That really matters because if you have one person in a full-on suit with a tie and one person with like boat shoes, no socks, and shorts, then that's an awkward team presentation. I would, in general, always recommend that you go full suit for these case competitions. I don't think that there's anybody who would fault you for it. And the suit combined with the great presentation is an awesome focus area. But at the very least, dress similarly to the rest of your teammates so you look like you're a team, like you thought about it and talked about it together. But everybody doesn't have to be in like black and white, right? You don't have to do the 80s family photo situation. Marc, anything on executive presence that you want to add before I land this plane?
Well, yes, and this doesn't tie perfectly into it, but going actually in the beginning, if it's a live case competition and the judges are there in the room with you, it's important to go up to the judges, look them in the eye, shake their hand, and thank them for their time. I've done a lot of judging, and sometimes the teams just hang back and don't even come up and say hello. You want to go up there, you want to make that connection early. It impresses the judges. It's what you should do. And if you don't do it, they're going to wonder why. And you already lost a point right from the start, even before it starts.
Love it. The way that we're just going to kind of tie all of this together is to say, like, one of the major ways you could lose a case competition is to not tell a compelling story. We really notice this in the first rounds. Usually you don't make it to the final rounds if you kind of can't tell a cohesive story. But when 4 people have 4 slides that they slotted in separately and they try to pretend it's peanut butter and jelly all mixing together and it's just not vibing. That's one of the key ways that we kick you out. When it's like, these are 4 parts of a disjointed story or 4 parts that don't even tell the same story. Those are very easy ways to lose the process. Now, sometimes you thought about the story in a cohesive way, but since we're talking about delivery here, that narrative needs to translate to your talk track. So it can't just be a slide-based narrative that tells the story. It also has to be an off-slide narrative that tells the story. And one of the big missed opportunities is that a lot of you are like, here is the data, instead of here's what the data means. You stop too short of convincing us that the data that we're seeing should lead us to the conclusion that you drew. And again, you're maybe overinflating our competence, our intelligence, or probably more than likely our focus inside these sessions. And you have to really make it clear, really make it crystallized, and not focus on why your idea is the best, but bringing it back to the beginning, focus on why your idea is the clearest. Marc, I know that you included this slide in here as well. Do you want to kind of just talk a little bit about how you would utilize this slide, and then we'll go from there to the final questions that Japheth had.
Actually, I probably should have told Joseph to take this out, but so this is at the end of when I do a case competition workshop. This is pretty much what my final index slides are, if you will. And I'll open it up to questions, and when people ask me a question about building the pitch or storytelling, I'll click on that and go back. So it was really, I had it in here just to show that you could find any slide within basically 2 clicks. But as we kind of came together and put it all together, it really, we can take we can take it out.
That's great. I mean, I think, Mark, I think this is really helpful. I think that you're right, a lot of people don't include this, mostly because they're not sure what slides are going to be in the presentation until 4 minutes before they're actually uploading the presentation. This is just another reason why the winning teams often finish early, have extra time, and really think through the full story. Japheth, I'll let you call out on this slide any of the questions that you really think would be helpful to answer. I know that you've already asked a couple of them so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I thought it would be helpful to kind of go down to the end. There's a few good questions in there. So, number one, and this is actually a little bit, this is from YouTube. So, the question was, how do you deal with a lackluster teammate? And I think it brings about the conversation around dealing with team dynamics, dealing with conflict, dealing with just people being people. So, any advice from either of you would be appreciated.
Off with their head, right, Marc?
Yes, yes. They shouldn't have been picked in the first place. So back to the slide of who's on your team. How do you pick your team?
Yeah.
Is it your drinking buddies that are gonna pull this off? Probably not. Don't be afraid to go outside your little bubble to find the right person to join the team and have those all the things that we talked about, being able to leave their ego at the door, being team members and good communication skills and all that, all the things that we talked about before. But off with their head is a good one.
You can see Mark's much nicer than I am. That's been generally true in the years that we've known each other. Look, I think that what Mark is saying is that a lot of you are too nice at the beginning and it results in a lot of pain at the end. But the reality is that some of you also don't have the option to pick who's on your team. You won't have this option when you're working with people. You won't have this option inside the case competition. I'm thinking of some of the like MBA kind of orientation case competitions that we see, right? Welcome to your MBA. Here's 5 people, all of whom are here for different reasons. Somebody's from a family office. Somebody is here to get a consulting job. Somebody wants to do banking. Somebody wants to start a company. We shove you all together and make you do a case competition. And you have different levels of investment or interest depending on maybe who the judges are or just kind of, the focus on the skill building that you brought into a program. So I would say the number one way that you can deal with a lackluster team member is hide them in the middle of a program, right? So Mark said earlier, right, beginning and end are going to be super strong. And so when you are deciding what to do, if that person, hopefully will have kind of lighter opinions, put them in the middle of the presentation, put them somewhere, where it's not going to help you kind of ring things home. Definitely don't put them right at the beginning. You're going to want to make sure that the first impression is super strong. And then, kind of give them limited focus. If you're in a case competition where everybody is not required to speak a lot, you might even give them like, the next step slide at the end, which is kind of limited in scope. And the other way to handle it is like follow the rules of the case comp, do your best, and tell a great story in an interview. Just recognize that sometimes, like if you can't win the case competition isn't the real prize. The job is the prize. And so when you walk into an interview and you say, hey, I had this really difficult person, here's what I did, here's how we managed it, here's what happened in the end. The ability to speak really honestly to those challenging stories can be great.
And nothing's more honest than a video. So if you have the time, videotape your presentation before the competition starts. The person will see how they come off and hopefully change. Because they, if they know they're making certain mistakes or if they're not being articulate enough or have enough energy, that will come through on the video. The video doesn't lie. And it'll be a nice kick in the pants to them. And if they don't change, then there's not much you can do about that, but stick them in the middle or have them operate the slides and not.
One more, Jay?
Sure. I mean, take your pick. We've got some fun ones here.
Oh gosh, so good. I actually really like what about hooks, memorable mechanisms, or presentation devices? Should you use them? Right, only once you have the content and recommendations completely ready. I'm going to combine that with the one in advance, which is there a format for the story? Yeah, we do recommend that you build a story format. And actually, if you've never read Case in Point, I'd get Case in Point and Mark's book on case competitions, because a lot of what they do in Case in Point, a lot of what we do on our site is talk about frameworking. Actually, in the World Cup, we gave y'all the framework because we wanted you to tell a similar story. And we really didn't want people to battle thinking about this like creative story they were telling. We wanted you to focus on the data analysis and the presentation. And we still got a ton of really crappy presentations, even when we told you what the story should be. So we don't care because we love seeing them. We want you to learn. But what we really want is for people to think not just about the content of the slides, but the arc of the story. And so ours are usually kind of like what's happening in the market at the macro scale. What kind of customers are you trying to target? Who are you competing with? What operationally do you need to do? And then how is the company's capabilities aligned with this? What's their capacity, for example, to execute on this project? So hopefully that's kind of an opportunity for y'all to think through that. And then from the memorable mechanism or presentation devices, I always think questions answered inside a presentation are powerful, right? We wondered, what is the size of the market? Well, when we investigated it, we noticed that it was this. I think that's a very common, awesome way to draw in your audience, to ask the question that you want them to ask, and then to also answer that question directly inside the presentation. Marc, any final comments you want to share before we sign off?
Just confidence level, communication skills are so important. And, will you immediately get hired if you win a case competition? The answer to that is probably no, but it could lead very easily into an interview, or have you skip an interview, particularly for internships at the undergraduate level or even at the MBA level. And the last thing is, have fun with this. If you're not having fun, if this doesn't excite you, if you don't like working as part of a team, answering questions, then you're barking up the wrong tree. I think one of the best reasons to go into consulting is that the learning curve never ends. And you're always learning something new, you're always facing things. And if you're not that type of person, then this isn't the industry for you. And you know what? If you don't want to put the time, and if you don't have that mindset, they don't want you. They want driven people who love solving problems. So that's my final word.
Thanks everyone for coming. We hope you learned a lot in today's session. Hopefully this will help you think about shaping your competitive strategy for case competitions for class year 2025-2026. Please reach out to Marc, reach out to the MC team if you've got questions about case competitions. We'd love to help, but we're cheering you on. We love these. They're incredible learning experiences. We hope to see more of you do them, to the point where we hope to actually bring them to middle and high schools in the future, so that you're actually not seeing these for the first time in college or at your MBA program, but even before. I think there's a long runway for these types of learning opportunities, and we're excited to be a part of it. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Jenny Ray.